Personal protective equipment is a paramount in construction and manufacturing for safeguarding workers against potential hazards like falls, impact, and chemical exposures. Conformance to global standards like IS standard, EN standard, or ANSI standards ensure PPE's effectiveness, reliability, and uniformity in design. Certification from reputable bodies like ISI or CI guarantees rigorous testing, assuring quality and compliances. Such adherence not only enhances worker safety but also minimizes workplace incidents and legal liabilities, making PPE's conformity and confirmation imperative in these industries. Hey guys, I'm Shivam, and in this video I'm going to discuss on PPE's Global Standard, ISI and CE certifications, what is MTC, how certification is obtained for PPEs by the manufacturers. So let's get started. Let's understand what is the global standards are there for PPEs. The first standard is IS standard, which is called Indian standard, EN standard, European norm. The third one is ISO standard, which is called International Organization for Standardization. The next is ANSI standard, American National Standard Institute. Let's understand what is the difference between IS standard, EN standard and ANSI standard. Is it mandatory standards? How these are related to ISI, BSI or CE marking, which you would have seen on PPEs. IS standards, Indian standard, EN standard means European norm, and ANSI standard means American National Safety Institute are all set of technical specification and guidelines that provide criteria for product design, performance and safety. These standards are developed to ensure the quality, safety and compatibility of products within their respective regions. Here's a breakdown of the differences between these standards and their relationship to ISI, Indian Standard Institute and CE marking. Let's understand what is IS standard or Indian standard. The scope of IS standard is IS standard are developed by the Bureau of Indian Standard BIS and cover various products categories for the Indian market. What is the regulatory authority of IS standard is IS standards are typically voluntary but can become mandatory through government regulations. They are used to establish minimum requirements for product quality, safety and performance in India. The relationship of IS standards with BIS or ISI is ISI used to stand for the Indian Standard Institution, but it has been replaced by the Bureau of Indian Standard BIS. BIS is responsible for formulating and maintaining IS standards. ISI certification indicates that a product complies with specific Indian standards. Let's understand what is EN standard means European norms. The scope of European norms is EN standard are developed by the European Committee for Standardization means CEN and provide technical specification and guideline for various industries and products within the European context. The regulatory authority of EN standard is EN standard are voluntary but are often referred in European Union means EU directives and regulations. Compliance with relevant EN standard can support manufacturers in achieving CE marking, which is mandatory for certain products in the EU market, means European Union market. What is the relationship to CE marking of EN standard? So, EN standards are often used to demonstrate conformity with essential health, safety, and environment requirements set out in EU directives. CE marking indicates that a product meets these requirements. Compliance with EN standard is not mandatory on its own, but it helps manufacturers meet the requirements for CE marking. What is ANSI standard, which is American National Standard Institute? The scope of ANSI standard is ANSI standards are developed in the United States and cover various industries and products within the US context. The regulatory authority of ANSI standard is ANSI standards are voluntary in the US but are widely recognized and used as a basis for establishing product quality and safety. They provide guidelines for best practices in various industries. Relationship to regulation of ANSI standard is ANSI standards are not mandatory on their own but might be referred in government regulation or industry guidelines. In summary, IS standards are developed for the Indian market, EN standards are used within the European context, often in relation to CE marking, and ANSI standards are used in the US and other countries. While these standards are not always mandatory by themselves, they often influence regulatory requirements or support manufacturers in meeting those requirements. Let's understand what are the global standards are there for hard hat or safety helmet used in construction or manufacturing industries. So what is the certification or standards are there for hard hat is, one is EN standard, European norm 397, modified in year of 2012, which is mentioned or marked with CE certification or marking. The next standard for safety helmet is IS 2925 and ISI certification or marking is placed for conformance to IS standard of safety helmet. Let's understand what is the global standard for safety shoes. The certification or standards for safety shoe is the European norms or ISO standard 20345, modified in year of 2011, marked with CE marking. The Indian standard for safety shoe is IS 15298, part 2, modified in year of 2016 and marked with ISI. What is the gumboot with steel toe requirement for global standard? The certification or marking for the gumboot manufacturing is IS 12254. The reflective safety vests used in construction are to be certified with global standard, and the global standard for vest is the Indian standard for safety reflective vest is IS 15809, modified in year of 2008. High visibility warning cloths and marked with ISI. The next is European norms 471, mentioned as high visibility clothing and marked with CE. Next is safety goggles. The clear glass goggles used in construction, which has to be certified or marked with EN 166, modified in year of 2001. The IS standard for safety goggles is IS 5983, modified in year of 1980. The ANSI standard for safety goggle is Z87.1-2015. These are the marking for safety goggles. Let's understand what is the chemical environment user's choice goggles. The certification for these goggles is European norm 166, modified in year of 2001. The prescription glass wearer's choice spectacles has to be certified from EN standard 166, modified in year of 2001 and marked with CE. The IS standard for these type of spectacles glasses is IS 5983, developed in year of 1980 and marked with ISI. The ANSI standard is Z87.1-2020, marked with ANSI. Let's understand what is electric arc welder's choice eye wear. The certification for these type of eye wear is European norm EN 166-2001 and EN 175, modified in year of 1997, marked with CE. Let's understand what is a face shield certification or standard. Has to be EN 166, developed in the year of 2001. The Indian standard for face shield is 8521-1, modified in year of 1977. The ANSI standard for face shield is Z87.1-2020. The helmet mountable welding shield has to be certified for the standard of EN is 175, developed in year of 1997 and marked with CE. Let's understand what are the hand gloves certification requirements like cut hand, cut resistant, cotton dotted. The EN standard for these type of hand gloves are 388, modified in year of 2016. Let's discuss what are the global standards are there for face masks used in construction or manufacturing. The disposable face respiratory has to be certified for ISI 9473, modified in year of 2002, and European norm AN is 149. The disposable surgery or 3-ply face mask has to be certified for IS 16289, modified in year of 2014. Let's understand what are the standards are there for the full body harness. The standard for the full body harness is EN 361, modified in year of 2002. Next is IS standard 3521 part 1, modified in year of 2021. Let's discuss what is the earplug global requirements or standard and certification requirements. The certification standard for earplug is EN 352-2 2002 and IS standard 9167, modified in year of 1979. Let's discuss what are the earmuffs certification requirement is EN 352-1 2002 and IS standard 9167, developed in year of 1979. Let's discuss what are the safety standard and the certification requirement for rope glove fall arrestor or fall arrestor. The standard is EN 353-2, modified in year of 2002. The IS standard for fall arrestor is IS 3521 2021. Let's understand what is MTC, Material Test Certificate for PPEs. A Material Test Certificate or MTC for personal protective equipment is a document that provides information about the testing and certification of the materials used in the manufacturing of PPE. This certificate ensures that the PPE meets certain quality and safety standards. Here are some common elements you might find in Material Test Certificate for PPE. Content of PPE MTC. What are the contents has to be there in material test certificate? The first content has to be the manufacturer information, the name, address and contact details of the manufacturer or supplier of the PPE. Second is product information, a description of the PPE including its type, model, serial number and intended use. The third one is materials used. So details information about the materials used in the PPE including their consumption, composition, specification and relevant standard. Next, test methods has to be there, means description of the testing methods employed to assess the material property such as tensile strength, durability, chemical resistance, etc. Fifth, test results has to be mentioned. The results of the test performed on the materials including any relevant measures, values or performance characteristics. Sixth content is compliance with standard, information about the relevant standard and regulation that the PPE conforms to along with any certificate marks or labels it carries. Seventh is batch or lot number. If applicable, the MTC may include information about the batch or lot number associated with the materials used in the production of the PPE. The eighth point has to be the date of testing, the date when the testing was conducted and the certificate was issued. Ninth is authorized signature. Signature or stamps from authorized personnel such as quality control managers or authorized representative from the manufacturer or testing facility. Validity period. Some MTCs might include an expiration date or a recommendation for retesting after a certain period. Let's discuss what is CE certification, ISI certification and ANSI certification for personal protective equipments. CE marking, ISI marking and RC marking or certification are all different forms of product certification that indicates compliance with specific standard or regulations. Here's a breakdown of the differences between these certifications in the context of personal protective equipments. CE marking means conformant European. Scope of this CE marking is CE marking is used within the European Economic Area means EEA and indicates that a product complies with essential health, safety and environment requirements set out in applicable EU directives. The regulatory authority of this CE marking is CE marking is regulated by the European Union itself. It is mandatory for certain types of PPEs that are covered by relevant EU directives. Testing and certification. PPE manufacturers seeking CE marking must adhere to specific standard, often EN standard, and ensure that their products meet the essential requirements outlined in the applicable EU directive. Third-party certification bodies may be involved in assessment and testing of the product's compliances. Let's understand what is ISI marking or Indian Standard Institution. The scope of this ISI marking is specific to India and indicates conformity with Indian standard for safety, quality and performance. Regulatory authority. The Bureau of Indian Standard BIS is responsible for developing and maintaining IS standard and issuing ISI certification. The testing and certification of ISI marking is manufacturers seeking ISI certification for their PPE must ensure their products meet the relevant IS standard specified by Bureau of Indian Standard or BIS. The products undergo testing and assessment to ensure they conform to these standards. The ANSI marking or certification, American National Safety Standard Institute. The scope of ANSI standard and certification are used primarily within the United States and are often recognized internationally. Regulatory Authority of ANSI is a private organization that develops voluntary consensus standard across various industries in the US. Testing and certification. ANSI standards provide technical specification and guidance for products including PPE, while ANSI certificates are not typically required by law. Adherence to ANSI standards can signify that a product meets industry accepted criteria for safety and performance. In summary, the key differences lie in the geographical scope, regulatory authority, and testing and certification requirements for each type of marking or certification on the PPE. CE marking is mandatory within the European Union and indicates compliance with EU directives. It involves adherence to specific EN standard and essential requirements. ISI marking is specific to India and denotes conformity with Indian standards set by Bureau of Indian Standard or BIS. It involves compliances testing to relevant IS standards. The ANSI marking or certification is primarily used in the US and ANSI standard provide industry accepted guidelines. ANSI certification is not always mandatory but can demonstrate adherence to recognized safety and performance standards. Brief steps of getting ISI CE certificate for PPEs by the manufacturer means how the manufacturers are getting the ISI or CE certification after manufacturing the PPEs. So, obtaining ISI or CE certification for personal protective equipments involves several steps and the process can be complex. Below is a brief outline of the general steps that manufacturers would typically follow to get ISI or CE certification for their PPE. ISI certification process. First is determine applicable IS standards. It means identify the specific Indian standard that apply to your type of PPE. These standards are developed and maintained by the Bureau of Indian Standards. Second step is product development and testing. Means the manufacturer has to design his PPEs to meet the requirements of the relevant IS standard. He has to conduct the testing on materials, components and the final product to ensure compliances with these standards. Next step is he has to select and approve the same from the laboratory approved by the BIS. So in this step, the manufacturer a BIS approved testing laboratory to conduct the required test on the manufacturer PPE samples. Means the manufacturer has to send his PPE samples to authorized laboratory for further material test certification. Next is submit samples for testing. The manufacturer will send representative samples of PPEs to the chosen testing laboratory. The laboratory will perform the required test according to the applicable IS standard. The next step will be the laboratory will provide the material test certificate. Once the testing is completed, the laboratory will provide a material test certificate that outlines the test results and confirm compliance with IS standards. Prepare the documentation. This is the next step. Compile all necessary documentation including the MTC, test report, technical specification and other required information. Now, a manufacturer in this step has to apply for the IS certification. Now, submit your application for IS certification to the Bureau of Indian Standard. This application will include documentation which you have prepared. In next step, BIS assessment will be conducted. Now, BIS will review your application and documentation. They may conduct on-site inspection or audits to ensure compliances with these standards in the manufacturing facility of the manufacturer. Now, in final step, issuance of ISI mark. If your PPEs are met with all the requirements, then BIS will grant the ISI certification and you will be authorized to use the ISI mark on your PPEs or certified PPEs products. So this is the sample of ISI certification provided to the manufacturer by the BIS for manufacturing of PPEs. The next is how the CE certification shall be processed by the manufacturer for any PPEs manufacturing. In first step, identify applicable directive or EN standard for this CE certification. So determine the relevant European standard, EU directives that apply to your PPE, identify the corresponding European norms or EN standard that your PPE must adhere to. In next step, product development and testing. Design your PPE to comply with the essential requirements of the applicable EU directives. Conduct testing, inside or internal testing or in-house testing to demonstrate conformity with these standards. Select a notified body if applicable. Some PPE categories require involvement from a notified body, which is an independent third-party certification organization approved by European EU. Perform testing and assessment. Conduct the testing on your PPEs to demonstrate compliance with these standards. If a notified body is involved, then they will assess your technical documentation and conduct conformity assessment. In next step, compile the technical documentation. In this step, create a technical file that includes all relevant information about your PPE design, materials, testing results, and compliance with standard. Next step will be prepare declaration or conformity. In this step, prepare a declaration of conformity, a document that attests your PPE's compliance with the applicable directive and standard. The next step, affix the CE marking, or that is the final step. After fulfilling all the requirements, you can affix the CE mark on your PPE, indicating compliances with EU regulation. Next would be or final is market surveillance. CE certified PPE is subject to market surveillance by authorities to ensure ongoing compliance. So this is the CE certification received by a manufacturer for his PPE. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe my YouTube channel. Please comment below to let me know what kind of videos you are looking for further. Please share this video with your friend. Thank you.